You've probably had this exact moment. You open an app to check one specific thing, a message, a notification, 30 seconds tops, and somehow you look up and 45 minutes are gone. Here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. That wasn't a lapse in your self-control. That was a feed, quietly and continuously rebuilding itself around you in real time, based on a profile of your attention that got more accurate with literally every second you spent looking at it. Let's start with the part almost nobody thinks about, which is that the feed you're scrolling isn't the same feed anyone else is scrolling, not even someone sitting right next to you looking at the same app. What you see is assembled, moment to moment, by a ranking system built specifically to predict one thing: what's most likely to keep you looking a little longer. Every video you pause on, every post you linger over without even liking it, every time you scroll past something a fraction of a second faster than usual, all of it becomes data feeding directly back into the system, refining its next guess about you. The feed isn't showing you what's popular. It's showing you a live, constantly updating portrait of exactly what your own attention has already told it you can't look away from. Here's a curiosity gap worth sitting with. Why does it so often feel like the app knows you better than your friends do? Because in a very narrow, very specific sense, it does. Not your personality, not your values, but your attention patterns, measured with a precision no person could ever track about another person in real time. A friend might vaguely notice you like a certain kind of humor. The algorithm has logged the exact millisecond you stopped scrolling on it, whether you watched to the end, whether you went back and watched it twice, and it uses all of that, continuously, to build a version of the feed that gets a little more precisely tuned to you every single day you use it. Let's talk about ranking versus chronology, because this shift matters more than it sounds like it should. Older versions of most feeds simply showed you posts in the order they were made, newest first, a straightforward timeline. Almost every major platform has since moved away from that model towards something called engagement-optimized ranking, where posts are ordered not by when they happened, but by how likely the system predicts you are to engage with them. That shift sounds small. It isn't. A chronological feed has a natural end. You eventually catch up to now and there's nothing left. A ranked feed has no natural end at all, because there's always another prediction, another slightly more optimized piece of content the system is confident will hold your attention just a little longer than the last one did. Now here's the part that genuinely deserves a pause. These systems aren't guessing once and moving on. They're running what amounts to a constant, invisible experiment on you specifically, testing which version of a headline, which thumbnail, which posting time keeps you engaged longest, and quietly adjusting based on the results. This is sometimes called A/B testing at scale, and on major platforms it happens continuously, across millions of users simultaneously, refining what works down to individual behavioral quirks. You're not watching a fixed piece of content and reacting to it. You're one data point in an ongoing experiment that never officially concludes, because there's no reason for the platform to ever stop optimizing. Let's talk about the filter bubble this creates, because it's a side effect most people never consciously notice happening to them. The more precisely a feed learns what keeps you engaged, the more it narrows toward that specific thing, showing you more of what already worked and less of everything else. Over time, this can quietly shrink the range of perspectives, topics, and even emotional tones you're regularly exposed to, not because anyone decided to limit what you see, but simply because the system is relentlessly optimizing for one metric, time spent, and a narrower, more predictable feed is often a stickier one. There's also an emotional layer worth naming directly. Content that provokes a strong reaction, surprise, outrage, humor, tends to perform extremely well in engagement-based ranking systems, because strong reactions correlate closely with pausing, commenting, and sharing, all signals the algorithm reads as success. This isn't because platforms deliberately set out to make people angry. It's a side effect of optimizing purely for engagement without weighing what kind of engagement it is. A calm, thoughtful piece of content and a genuinely infuriating one might generate similar engagement numbers, and a system trained purely to maximize that number has no built-in reason to prefer one over the other. The strange part is that none of this feels like manipulation while it's happening. It feels natural. It feels like you're simply following your own interests. But behind every swipe is a system making thousands of predictions every second, constantly asking one question: what will keep this person here just a little longer? Every answer you give through your behavior becomes another lesson for the algorithm. It doesn't need you to click the like button. It doesn't need you to leave a comment. It only needs to watch how your attention moves. Did you pause for 3 seconds? Did you replay a video? Did you close the app immediately after seeing a certain post? Every tiny action becomes another clue. Over weeks and months, those clues turn into a remarkably detailed map of your habits. Think about how different that is from television or newspapers. Years ago, everyone watching the evening news saw the same stories in the same order. Everyone reading the front page saw the same headlines. Today, two people can open the same social media app at the exact same moment and see completely different worlds. One person sees comedy videos, another sees political debates. Someone else sees cooking recipes, travel clips, or fitness advice. None of those feeds happened by chance. They were individually built, one recommendation at a time, based on millions of previous interactions. This is why social media feels so personal. It isn't simply delivering information, it's creating an experience unique to you. Every recommendation is another prediction. Every prediction is tested. If it works, the system learns. If it fails, the system tries something else. The process never really stops. Even while you're watching one video, the algorithm is already preparing the next one. It has dozens of possible choices waiting, and it selects the one it believes has the highest chance of keeping your attention. The longer you stay, the more confident those predictions become. After hundreds of hours, the system begins recognizing patterns you probably don't notice yourself. It learns that you watch science videos late at night but prefer short comedy clips during lunch. It notices that you finish documentaries but skip advertisements almost instantly. It recognizes that you spend longer reading controversial comments than positive ones. None of this requires understanding your thoughts. It only requires measuring your behavior. This creates something researchers often call a feedback loop. You watch certain content because the algorithm recommends it. Then the algorithm recommends more of that same content because you watched it. Over time, your interests can become narrower without you ever deciding to narrow them. Instead of exploring new topics, you keep returning to familiar ones because those are the recommendations placed in front of you. It feels like freedom of choice, but your choices are increasingly guided by what the system believes will succeed. Even your emotions become signals. If a surprising video makes you stop scrolling, the algorithm notices. If an emotional story keeps you watching until the end, it notices that too. If an argument in the comments makes you stay for 5 extra minutes, that information becomes valuable. The algorithm doesn't experience emotions itself. It simply measures which emotions produce longer engagement. Surprise, curiosity, excitement, humor, fear, and outrage often perform well because they naturally capture human attention. That's one reason why dramatic headlines seem to spread so easily online. A headline that makes people curious is more likely to earn a click. A video that shocks viewers is more likely to be shared. A post that sparks an argument usually generates more comments than one everyone quietly agrees with. The system isn't choosing sides. It's responding to numbers. If stronger emotions produce stronger engagement, then stronger emotions naturally become more common throughout the feed. Another powerful feature is unpredictability. Imagine if every 5th video was guaranteed to be amazing. You would simply skip until you reached it. But social media doesn't work that way. Sometimes the next video is boring. Sometimes it's fascinating. Sometimes it's hilarious. Because you never know when the next great piece of content will appear, your brain keeps expecting another reward just one swipe away. Psychologists have studied this pattern for decades. Unpredictable rewards are often far more effective at holding attention than predictable ones. Infinite scrolling makes that system even more powerful. There is no final page. There is no clear stopping point. Television episodes end. Newspapers run out of pages. Books have a final chapter. Social media feeds have no natural finish line. Every time you reach the bottom, more content appears instantly. Without a stopping cue, your brain has fewer reasons to put the phone down. There's a specific window worth knowing about too, sometimes called the cold start period, the first few minutes or hours after you open a brand new account or a feed you haven't used much. During that window, the system doesn't know much about you yet, so it tends to show a wide, somewhat generic sample of high-performing content, testing your reactions across categories almost like a survey. What you engage with in that early window disproportionately shapes everything that follows, because the algorithm treats those first signals as a strong starting hypothesis about who you are. A few minutes of idle curiosity clicking on things that happen to be entertaining in that first session can end up steering months of future recommendations simply because the system had to start guessing from somewhere and those early clicks were the first real data it got. Notification timing deserves its own mention here as well, because it isn't sent out on a fixed schedule the way it might feel like it is. Many platforms personalize exactly when a notification arrives based on your own historical activity patterns, timing a nudge to land during the specific windows you've been most likely to open the app in the past. That's part of why a notification can feel almost eerily well-timed, arriving right as you've picked up your phone for an unrelated reason. It's not reading your mind in that moment. It's reading a pattern built from every previous moment you've ever responded to something similar. Here's the part that ties all of it together. None of this requires anyone to be watching you individually, and it doesn't need to be sinister to work exactly the way it does. It's simply what happens when a system is built with one single goal: keep attention as long as possible, and given enough data and enough time to optimize toward that goal without any other consideration built in. The feed isn't trying to trick you specifically. It's trying to trick the general shape of a human attention span, and it's had an enormous amount of practice. So the next time you catch yourself scrolling well past the point you meant to stop, the useful question isn't, "Why do I have no willpower?" It's closer to, "What did the system learn about me that made stopping this hard?" And once you start asking that question instead, the scroll itself starts to feel a lot less like a personal failing and a lot more like exactly what it actually is: a very well-tuned system doing precisely what it was built to do, refined not once but continuously, on a version of your attention it understands better every single day you hand it more to work with.